The wine glass shimmered under the chandelier light when Harper raised it. Her smile was perfect, rehearsed. "A toast," she announced, and the whole table went silent. "To mothers-in-law." She made a dramatic pause. "Some mothers-in-law are useful. They contribute. They understand when to stay and when to leave." She looked directly at me, unblinking. "Others just take up too much space." Mason's laughter exploded first. "My son, the boy I carried in my womb, who I raised alone, for whom I sacrificed everything." He was laughing with his hands on the table, eyes closed, as if it were the funniest thing he had ever heard in his life. The other guests laughed too, nervous, uncomfortable, but they laughed. I just smiled. I raised my glass slowly, very slowly. The silence began to grow. "How interesting," I said with a calm they didn't know I possessed. "Because it turns out I just bought my own mansion." Harper stopped smiling. 2,000 miles from here." Mason stopped laughing. "So don't worry. I'm never going to occupy your space again." I drank my wine while their faces froze. "In fact, you are never going to see me occupying any space again. I'm moving in 10 days. I set the glass on the table with a sharp thud. "Enjoy dessert." I walked out of that house with my back straight, without looking back, without tears. I drove through the empty streets, feeling something strange in my chest. It wasn't rage, it wasn't sadness. It was something bigger. It was freedom mixed with silent revenge. It was knowing that every word I had said was absolutely true. The mansion existed. It had 5 bedrooms, a massive backyard, and an ocean view. And they had no idea that I had built an empire while they treated me like a servant. But this story doesn't start at that dinner. It starts much earlier. 30 years earlier, when I still believed that unconditional love existed and that families took care of each other. I was 8 years old when I understood that in my house there were 2 types of daughters, the ones who mattered and the ones who just filled space. Margaret was the first. I was the second. Mom never said it with words. She didn't have to. She said it with looks, with hugs that avoided me, with smiles that faded when I entered the room. Margaret was pretty, sociable, nice. I was quiet, serious, invisible. "Eleanor, get me some water. Eleanor, pick this up. Eleanor, don't be a bother. Your sister is studying." The orders came like breaths. Automatic, constant. I remember the day Margaret won a drawing contest at school. Mom organized a party, balloons all over the living room, a 3-tier cake, the whole family invited. Margaret wore a coral dress that Mom had sewn for her over weeks. I wore my usual school clothes because no one told me there was a celebration. "Eleanor, go to the kitchen and help your aunt with the dishes," Mom ordered me while everyone sang around Margaret. I was 8 years old and had gotten a perfect score on my math test that same week. Nobody knew, nobody asked. I washed dishes for 2 hours while I listened to laughter in the living room. Dad died when I was 15. Massive heart attack, no warnings, no goodbyes. Mom fell apart so completely that she forgot I was suffering too. She cried, hugging Margaret. I made coffee, answered calls, organized the funeral. "You are so strong, Eleanor," people said. As if strong were a compliment. As if I weren't allowed to fall apart too. Margaret cried on Mom's shoulder. I cried in the bathroom with the door locked and the water running so no one would hear me. 2 years later, Margaret married Richard. A man with money, a good name, a future. The wedding was in a huge ballroom. Imported dress, 500 guests. Mom sold some of Grandma's jewelry to pay for part of the party. "Margaret deserves the best," she said. I worked part-time at a fabric store to help with the household bills. No one asked if I deserved anything too. I met Jack when I was 23. He worked in construction. Big, calloused, honest hands. He didn't have money, but he looked at me as if I were gold. I fell in love with that look. We got married in a small ceremony. 15 people, a simple dress I sewed myself. Mom didn't come. She said she had a headache. Margaret didn't either. She had a trip planned. I got married without my family and pretended I didn't care. Jack was good, hardworking. He treated me with affection. We moved into a small apartment, but it was ours. For the first time in my life, I had a space where no one gave me orders, where I decided. I got pregnant 6 months after getting married. Mason was born in February, under a full moon that illuminated the entire hospital room. I held him in my arms and swore that he would have all my love, that he would never feel invisible. Jack cried beside me, kissing my forehead, promising to be the best father in the world. Mason was barely 2 years old when Jack died. Accident at the construction site. A beam wasn't secured properly. It all happened in seconds. I was left a widow at 26, with a small child and debts I didn't know existed. Mom offered to let me move back home. But only until you get back on your feet, she said, as if grief had an expiration date. Margaret lent me $5,000, so you can stabilize yourself. She charged me back with interest 6 months later. I didn't go back to Mom's house. I couldn't. I got 2 jobs, one at a diner in the mornings, another cleaning offices at night. Mason went to a cheap daycare, where the caregivers didn't even know his full name. I slept 4 hours a day, but I paid the bills. Alone. The years passed in a blur of exhaustion and fierce love. Mason grew up healthy, smart, beautiful. I gave him everything I could claw from the world with my fingernails. New clothes every season, good shoes that wouldn't hurt his feet. Private school with a scholarship I got by begging the principal on my knees. He was my pride. My reason to open my eyes every morning at 5 a.m. When he turned 10, he hugged me and said, "You are the best mom in the world." I kept those words like a treasure. I would need them later, when he forgot them. Mom died when Mason was 12. Fast cancer. No mercy. At the funeral, Margaret cried as if she had lost a saint. I held her hand and felt nothing. Emptiness. Mom never asked for my forgiveness. She never acknowledged that she had ignored me my whole life. She left, taking with her any possibility of me hearing "I love you" from her lips. Margaret inherited the house. I inherited an old bracelet and a photo album where I didn't appear in any images. "Mom knew you are stronger," Margaret told me while we signed papers. "You don't need material things." I nodded. Because arguing with people like that is losing time I didn't have. Mason entered college with another scholarship. He studied business administration. I kept working double shifts to give him extra money, so he wouldn't be embarrassed, so he could go out with his friends. I came home exhausted, and he wouldn't even look up from his phone. "Hi, Mom," he would say without looking at me. I would ask him about his day. "Fine," he replied. A single word, as if I didn't deserve more, but there was something no one knew. Something I kept like a shining secret in the middle of my gray life. Since Jack died, I had started saving every penny I could. $5 here, 10 there. I hid them in a shoebox in the closet. When I gathered $1,000, I did something that terrified me. I invested. I bought shares of a small company that a customer at the diner mentioned once. I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew I couldn't keep living on the edge my whole life. Those shares multiplied. I sold them. I bought more. I learned on my own, reading books from the library, watching free videos on the internet at 3 in the morning. 5 years after starting, I had $40,000. 10 years later, I had $150,000. Nobody knew. Not Mason, not Margaret, nobody. I kept living in the same small apartment, wearing the same worn-out clothes, taking the bus. But I had a plan. A plan that grew in silence, like plants in the dark. My refuge was the apartment's small balcony, 10 square feet where I grew roses, red, yellow, orange. I took care of them every afternoon after work. They were the only thing truly mine. The only thing that bloomed because of my effort, and no one could ruin. Mason never paid attention to them. "They're just flowers, Mom," he said when I tried to show him a new rose that had budded. But for me, they were more. They were proof that I could create beauty even when everything around was gray. Mason met Harper in his senior year of college. She was studying interior design. She came from a family with money, expensive clothes, brand new car, nails always perfect. The first time she came to dinner, she looked at the apartment as if she had walked into a dumpster. "How cozy," she said, but her eyes said otherwise. I prepared my best meal: roast chicken, rice, fresh salad. Harper pushed the food around the plate without tasting almost anything. "I'm on a diet," she explained with a fake smile. Mason didn't say anything. He didn't defend me. He just kept eating, as if he didn't notice the contempt in his girlfriend's eyes. They got married 2 years later. I paid for half the wedding with my secret savings. Harper wanted a luxurious ballroom. "It's just been my dream since I was a little girl," she told Mason. He asked for my help with a sad puppy face. "Mom, you've always supported me." I couldn't refuse. I spent $40,000 on a wedding where Harper didn't even thank me, where they seated me at a table in the back, far from the main family, where the DJ mispronounced my name when he introduced me. Mason danced with Harper under colored lights and never asked me to dance, not a single song. After the wedding, everything changed. Harper moved into Mason's apartment, a small place, but better than mine. I kept visiting them every week, bringing food, helping with the cleaning. Harper accepted everything with a tense smile. "Thanks, Eleanor. How touching." But she never invited me to stay. She never asked how I was. Mason started canceling plans on me. "Harper and I have a dinner. Harper wants us to spend Sunday alone." I nodded. I always nodded. The humiliation started subtle. Comments wrapped in laughter. "Eleanor, that sweater is very old." "No. Eleanor, you should dye your hair. The gray makes you look old." "Eleanor, you don't understand modern decoration. It's normal." Mason laughed. Every time, as if his wife were saying something witty and not stabbing me with words. I smiled. I swallowed the humiliation with the coffee they never offered me. One day I arrived without warning. I knocked on the door with a pie I had made. Harper opened it with a face of annoyance. "Eleanor, we're busy." Behind her was Mason on the sofa, watching TV. They weren't busy. They just didn't want me there. "I just came to bring this," I said, offering the pie. Harper took it without looking at it. "How sweet. But you know Mason is watching his weight." She closed the door before I could respond. I stood in the hallway, holding my purse, feeling like something inside me was starting to crack. That night, on my balcony, looking at my roses under the moon, I made a decision. I checked my investments. I had over $400,000. I searched for properties on the internet. I found a house for sale 2,000 miles away, facing the ocean, 5 bedrooms, huge yard. It was a distressed sale, going for $750,000. I did calculations all night. I could get a mortgage with a large down payment. I could sell some shares. I could do it. And most importantly, I could leave. I could disappear from their lives and build something just mine. The next 6 months were a silent dance between two worlds. By day, I was still the invisible Eleanor, the mother-in-law who brought Tupperware of food, who cleaned without being asked, who smiled when Harper made her poisoned comments. But at night, in the privacy of my apartment, I was another person. A woman who checked interest rates, who negotiated with banks, who signed papers to buy a mansion she hadn't even seen in person, only in photos, only in virtual tours. But it was enough. It was my escape. My silent revenge. I got the loan by fudging small details. I said I worked at a single company with a better salary. I presented my investments as constant income. The bank approved the credit. I signed the papers with trembling hands. The house was mine. $750,000 for a piece of paradise where no one could humiliate me ever again. I hired someone to inspect the property. Everything was in order. Solid roof, new pipes, wild but recoverable garden. Perfect. I didn't tell Mason anything. I didn't tell anyone. I kept visiting them every week as if nothing were changing. Harper increased the poison in every encounter. "Eleanor, those pants are too tight on you. You should watch your figure." "Eleanor, don't use that perfume anymore. It smells like an old lady." "Eleanor, why do you always arrive without warning? Polite people call first." Mason nodded. Sometimes, not even that. He just kept looking at his phone while his wife tore me apart with words. One afternoon, Harper organized a gathering with her friends at her apartment. She asked me to go help with the food. "You just cook so well, Eleanor, and besides, it distracts you. I know you live very alone." I accepted. I arrived 2 hours early, prepared appetizers, served drinks, cleaned the kitchen. When the friends arrived, Harper introduced me as Mason's mom, who was kind enough to help us today. Not as a guest, as an employee. I stayed in the kitchen while they laughed in the living room. I heard everything. "You're so lucky, Harper, that your mother-in-law is so helpful." "Yeah, although she takes up a lot of space, doesn't she? She's always here." Laughter. Mason arrived from work in the middle of that conversation. I heard him laugh too. My son, laughing at me with strangers. I walked out of that apartment without saying goodbye. I walked to the bus with my fists clenched, nails digging into my palms. I didn't cry. I had no tears left for people like that. I got home and opened my laptop. I searched for moving companies. I hired one for 3 weeks from then. I started packing in silence. Clothes, books, my balcony plants. Every box was a step toward freedom. Margaret called me a week later. Eleanor, I need you to lend me $10,000. Richard has problems with a business deal. My sister, the one who always had everything, asking me for money. I don't have that amount. I lied. Please, Eleanor, we're family. I've always helped you. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to scream at her that the only time she helped me, she charged me interest. But I just said, I'm sorry, Margaret. I can't. She hung up without saying goodbye. 3 days later, she sent me a text. Mom would be ashamed of how selfish you've become. I blocked her number. There were 2 weeks left until my move when Harper announced she would host a special dinner. To celebrate Mason's promotion at work, she invited me out of obligation. I accepted because I knew it would be the last time. I bought an expensive bottle of wine, $200 that I spent with pleasure, knowing what was coming. I arrived on time. Harper opened the door in a tight silver dress. Eleanor, what a surprise that you dressed up. I was wearing a simple wine-colored dress, the best I had. For her, it was still not enough. The dinner was tense from the start. They had invited 3 couple friends. Everyone talked about trips, new cars, expensive restaurants. I ate in silence. No one spoke to me. I was a ghost in my own chair. Until the moment of the toast arrived, Harper stood up with her glass. She looked at everyone. She smiled, and she said those words I had been waiting for without knowing it. A toast. To mothers-in-law. Dramatic pause. Some mothers-in-law are useful. They contribute. They understand when to stay and when to leave. She looked directly at me. Others just take up too much space. Mason's laughter was the one that hurt the most. Genuine. Amused. As if his mother, being humiliated, was entertainment. The guests laughed uncomfortably. Harper savored her moment of glory, and I, for the first time in 30 years, decided not to swallow the poison. I raised my glass slowly. Everyone went quiet. How curious that you say that, Harper, I said with a calm I didn't know I had. Because I just bought a mansion. Silence. 2,000 miles from here. Mason stopped laughing. With 5 bedrooms, a massive backyard, and an ocean view. Harper went pale. So you're right. I'm not going to occupy any more space. I move in 10 days. I drank my wine. In fact, this is the last time you are going to see me. You can keep all your free space. I left the glass on the table. Enjoy your dinner. I stood up. I took my purse. I walked toward the door. Mason finally reacted. Mom, wait. What are you saying? I turned around. I looked him in the eyes. My son. The boy for whom I sacrificed everything. I'm saying that I'm not going to be the mother-in-law who takes up space anymore. I'm going to be the woman who lives in a mansion while you guys pay rent on a 2-bedroom apartment. I opened the door. Goodbye, Mason. I went out into the hallway. I heard shouting inside. Harper's hysterical voice, Mason's confused voice. But I didn't go back. I went down the stairs. I went out to the parking lot. I got into my old car, and while I drove home, with the city lights blurring in the rearview mirror, I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Power. Pure. Crystal clear. Intoxicating. They thought they knew me. They thought I was the submissive woman, the sacrificed mother, the invisible mother-in-law. They knew nothing. They didn't know that for years I had built an empire in silence, that I had invested every penny they thought I didn't have, that I had planned my escape while they planned my humiliation. That night I slept deeply for the first time in months. I dreamed of the sea, of roses growing in a garden without limits, of a house where no one could tell me I took up too much space, because that space was mine, paid with my money, built with my effort, and no one, absolutely no one, could take it from me. The next 10 days were a whirlwind of boxes, papers, and liberation. I packed my life in silence. Every object I put away was a piece of the past I was leaving behind. The chipped mug I used every morning. The mended sheets I had washed 1,000 times. The investment books hidden under the bed. Everything went into boxes labeled with my own handwriting. The moving company would come in a week. I would fly out 2 days earlier to receive my things at the new house. At my mansion, Mason called the day after the dinner, 6 times. I didn't answer. He sent texts. "Mom, we have to talk. Mom, is the house thing serious? Mom, please, don't do this." I deleted every message without replying. Harper wrote too. A single message. "Eleanor, if this is a tantrum, that's enough. Mason is very upset." I blocked her number immediately. I didn't owe them explanations. I didn't owe them anything. Margaret appeared at my door 3 days later. She knocked insistently until I opened. "Can I know what is going on?" She entered without permission. She saw the boxes stacked in the living room. "It's true that you bought a house." Her face was a mixture of disbelief and envy. "Yes," I replied without giving details. "With what money, Eleanor? You always said you didn't have savings." She looked at me as if she had just discovered I was a stranger. "With my money, Margaret. With the money I earned working while everyone thought I was poor." She sat on my sofa without being invited. "Mason called me crying. He says you're abandoning him." I felt a pang in my chest, but I ignored it. "Mason is 32 years old, has a wife and a job. He doesn't need me. He's your son, and I am his mother, not his servant." Margaret stayed silent for the first time in her life. She looked at me with eyes I didn't recognize. "How much did the house cost?" she asked finally. $750,000. I saw her go pale. Her house, the one she inherited from Mom, was worth maybe $400,000. How? Investing, saving, doing what no one thought I could do. I stood up and opened the door. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to keep packing." Margaret stood up slowly. "Mom would be disappointed in you." Those words would have destroyed me before. Now they just made me laugh. Mom was already disappointed in me since I was born. "Margaret, there is no difference." My sister left without saying goodbye. I saw her walk away through the window and felt nothing. Not guilt, not sadness, just relief. That night I received a text from an unknown number. "Eleanor, I'm Chloe, Harper's sister. I need to talk to you. It's important." I hesitated. I almost didn't reply. But something in that message made me answer. "About what?" "About my sister. About what she's doing to your son. Can we meet tomorrow?" I agreed out of curiosity more than real interest. We met at a coffee shop on the other side of the city. Chloe was older than Harper, with short hair and a tired look. She sat across from me without preamble. "Harper is furious. She says you humiliated her in front of her friends. She drank her coffee. But I came to tell you that you did the right thing." I looked at her in surprise. "My sister is a manipulator. She always has been. She destroyed my cousin's marriage. She isolated my father from the whole family. And now she's doing the same with Mason." Chloe took out her phone. She showed me messages. Conversations where Harper spoke about me with a contempt that froze my blood. "The old lady is in the way. I have to get rid of her. Mason is so weak he doesn't dare set limits with his mother." I read every word, feeling something in me harden even more. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked. Chloe put the phone away. "Because I escaped my family too. I understand what you're doing. And I want you to know that you're not crazy, that you're not a bad mother, that you are choosing to save yourself." Her words were a balm I didn't know I needed. We talked for 2 hours. She told me how she had cut ties with her family 5 years ago, how she had rebuilt her life, how she was happy now for the first time. "Don't let them convince you to come back," she told me as we said goodbye. "Guilt is their favorite weapon. Don't fall for it." I went back home strengthened. I finished packing that night. My balcony roses were the last thing. I took them out of their pots with care. I wrapped the roots in damp soil and cloth. They would travel with me on the plane. I wasn't going to leave them behind. They were proof that I could create life, even in the smallest place. And now I would have a whole garden for them. 2 days before my flight, Mason appeared at the door. Without warning. He looked haggard, with deep, dark circles under his eyes. "Mom, please, let's talk." I didn't let him in. We talked in the hallway. "What do you want, Mason?" "For you not to go. For us to fix this." There is nothing to fix. Harper will apologize, I promise. I let out a bitter laugh. I don't want her apology, Mason. I want you to understand something very simple. I don't exist to make your life easier. I am not a piece of furniture. I am not an employee. I am your mother, and I deserve respect. He tried to touch my arm. I pulled away. Mom, I respect you. You watched me laugh when your wife humiliated me. Mason, you laughed. Not once. Hundreds of times over 5 years. His eyes filled with tears. I didn't realize. Exactly. You didn't realize. Because you never really saw me. The silence between us was an abyss. And now what? He asked with a broken voice. Now I live my life. And you live yours. Just like that? No. Mason. Just as necessary. I went into my apartment and closed the door. I heard him cry on the other side. I rested my forehead against the wood and closed my eyes. It hurt. Of course it hurt. He was my son. I had carried him in my womb. I had raised him alone. I had loved him with every fiber of my being. But that love couldn't keep destroying me. It couldn't keep being my prison. The night before my flight, I did one last thing. I wrote a letter. Not for Mason. Not for Margaret. For myself. Dear 8-year-old Eleanor, I know right now you think your place is in the corner, that your voice doesn't matter, that your pain doesn't count, but you're wrong. You're going to grow up. You're going to suffer a lot. You're going to be invisible for decades. But one day, at 64 years old, you're going to buy a mansion with your own money. You're going to plant roses in a limitless garden. You're going to look in the mirror and recognize yourself, and you're going to be free. Hang in there. It's worth it. I folded the letter and put it in my purse. The day of the flight dawned clear. The moving truck took everything at 6 in the morning. I took a taxi to the airport at 10. One suitcase, my purse, my roses carefully wrapped. Nothing else. In the waiting room, I checked my phone for the last time. 43 messages from Mason, 12 from Margaret, 5 from unknown numbers that were surely family friends. I ignored them all. I turned off the phone. When they called my flight, I walked toward the gate without looking back. I got on the plane. I settled into my seat. I held the small pot with my roses in my lap, and when the plane took off, when I saw the city getting small under the clouds, I felt 30 years of weight lift off my shoulders. I was flying, toward my house, toward my life, toward myself. The plane landed under an orange sunset sky. I walked out of the airport breathing air that tasted different, cleaner, freer. I had hired a driver who was waiting for me with a sign with my name. Mrs. Eleanor, he said with a kind smile. A man of about 50, with calm eyes. Welcome. I got into the car, feeling that every mile we advanced was a mile further from the past. The streets were wide, the trees greener. The ocean appeared in the distance, shining like a fulfilled promise. Almost there, said the driver, and then I saw it. My house, my mansion. It was more beautiful than I remembered in the photos. White, with huge windows, a wild garden that screamed to be loved. The iron gate opened slowly. We entered along a stone path. I got out of the car with my legs trembling. Not from fear, from pure emotion. Is it everything you expected? Asked the driver. It's more, I whispered. I walked toward the entrance. The key shone in my hand. I put it in the lock. It turned perfectly. I pushed the door and entered my new world. The interior smelled of wood and possibilities. Light plank floors, high ceilings, light entering from everywhere. I walked slowly through every room. The spacious living room with a stone fireplace, the kitchen with a center island and windows facing the garden. 3 bedrooms on the ground floor, 2 more upstairs. Bathrooms with deep tubs, huge closets. Everything empty, everything waiting for me. I went up to the master bedroom. It had a private balcony with an ocean view. I stood there, watching the waves breaking in the distance, and I cried. But not from sadness, from relief, from victory, from gratitude toward that Eleanor who had saved in silence for years, who had bet on herself when no one else did. That night I slept on the floor of the master bedroom, wrapped in a blanket I had brought in the suitcase. I didn't have furniture yet. It didn't matter. It was my floor, my house, my peace. I listened to the ocean all night, a constant sound that lulled decades of insomnia. The movers arrived 2 days later. The men unloaded my boxes with care. It wasn't a lot of stuff. A whole life fit in 20 boxes. Basic furniture I had bought online arrived that same afternoon. A queen-size bed, a cream-colored sofa, a dining table for 6 people. Little by little, the house began to take shape. Every object in its place was like a statement. I decided this. I chose it. I paid for it. I dedicated the first full week to the garden. It was a beautiful disaster. Grass up to my knees, shapeless bushes, wildflowers fighting for space. I hired a local gardener, a man named Earl, 70 years old, with knobby hands and wisdom in his eyes. "This garden has potential," he said, walking the grounds. "It just needs love." We worked together. I learned names of plants I had never heard. He taught me to prune, to sow, to listen to what the soil needed. I planted my roses in a special corner, with room to grow, with perfect light. "These are going to bloom like never before," Earl promised. And he was right. A month after being there, my phone was still off. I had bought a new one, with a new number. Only 3 people had it: the bank, my lawyer, and Chloe, who had become an unexpected friend. She wrote to me every week. "How's everything going? Have you adapted yet? Tell me about the ocean." I sent her photos of the garden. She sent me encouragement. It was enough. I met my neighbors little by little. To the right lived Claire, a woman my age, a widow too, with a huge dog named Thor. We became friends drinking coffee on her terrace. She told me she had arrived there after a terrible divorce. "This place heals," she said. I don't know how, but it does. To the left lived a young couple, Caleb and his wife, with 2 small children. They brought me homemade cookies and asked for gardening advice. "You have a gift," Caleb said, seeing my roses. I smiled. It wasn't a gift. It was dedication. It was love that finally had a place to bloom. I started going to the local market every Saturday, a place full of colors, smells, life. I bought fresh vegetables, freshly baked bread, flowers for the house. The lady who sold herbs adopted me. "Honey, try this basil. It's the best on the whole coast." She gave me extra sprigs, told me town gossip, made me feel part of something. For the first time in my life, I was visible, not out of obligation, not to serve, simply for existing. One afternoon, 2 months after my arrival, I was pruning rose bushes when my new phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated, but answered. Eleanor. It was a woman's voice. Older, trembling. "It's me." "Speak, Margaret." My stomach tightened. "How did you get this number?" Chloe gave it to me. "Don't hang up, please." Silence. I took a deep breath. "What do you want, Margaret?" I need you to know something. Mason is bad, very bad." I felt a pang, but kept my voice firm. "Mason is an adult. He has a wife. He has resources. Harper left him." That did surprise me. "What?" "She left. 3 weeks ago. She said she couldn't be with such a weak man, that she was tired of his mommy issues. Mason is devastated. Eleanor. He cries all the time. He lost his job. He's living in my house because he can't pay his rent." I closed my eyes. Part of me, that part of a mother that never dies, wanted to take the first plane back. But another part, the part that had built this new life, stood firm. "And what do you want me to do, Margaret? Come back? Talk to him?" "You're his mother. I am his mother. Not his savior, not his therapist, not his excuse. He's your only son, Eleanor. You abandoned him." That word. Abandon. As if I hadn't been there every damn day of his life. As if I hadn't sacrificed everything. I didn't abandon him, Margaret. I left. There is a huge difference. I left because you all pushed me out. I left because my mental health was worth more than your comfort. And I am not coming back. Margaret started to cry. "I don't recognize you. What happened to you?" "I found myself," I replied with a calm that surprised me. "I found myself after 64 years of being lost, and I'm not going to get lost again. You are selfish. Maybe. Or maybe I finally learned that taking care of myself isn't selfishness. It's survival. Mason asks for you every day. That hurt. But not as much as before. Tell him I'm okay, that I'm alive, that if he wants to talk to me, he can call, but that I am not going back to being who I was. And what if he needs to see you? I live 2,000 miles away, Margaret. He knows where I am. If he really needs me, he can get on a plane. He can make the effort. For the first time in his life, he can make the effort. I hung up. I sat in the garden, with the pruning shears in my hand, watching the ocean. The waves kept breaking, constant, eternal, indifferent to human drama. Earl appeared with a wheelbarrow full of soil. "Everything okay, Eleanor?" "Yes," I replied. And it was true. I was okay. Better than okay. That night, Claire came over with a bottle of wine. We sat on my terrace, under the stars. "Do you want to talk about what happened today?" she asked. I told her everything, from Margaret's call to the pain that still lived in my chest. She listened, without interrupting. When I finished, she poured more wine and said, "Children think mothers are infinite. Our love has no bottom." And they're right. Love has no bottom. But our tolerance does. Our mental health does. Our body does. You did good. He will learn. Or not. But you already did your part. Her words were a balm. I slept that night hugging that truth. I had already done my part. I had raised a son. I had given him everything. But it was no longer my job to save him from the consequences of his own decisions. It was no longer my job to sacrifice myself on the altar of his comfort. My job now was to live, to bloom, to be. The following days were lighter. The garden exploded in colors. My roses grew strong, bigger than ever. Earl was right. They just needed space. Like me, I started taking painting classes at a workshop in town. I discovered I had a knack for landscapes. My teacher, a woman named Julia, said I painted with soul. "You can tell you've lived a lot," she said. She didn't know how much. One day, walking on the beach, I found a perfect shell. Pale pink, no fractures. I held it up against the sun. The light went through it, creating beautiful patterns. I kept it in my pocket. That night I put it on my nightstand. A reminder. The most beautiful things are sometimes hidden under the sand. You just have to be willing to look for them. I had searched for 64 years, and I had finally found myself. 3 months after my arrival, my life had a rhythm I had never known. I woke up without an alarm when my body decided it was enough. I drank coffee on the terrace watching the sunrise over the ocean. I worked in the garden until noon. I ate a light lunch. In the afternoons I painted or read. The neighbors stopped by to say hello. Claire, Caleb, Earl. I had built a small community without trying, simply by being myself, without having to serve, without having to disappear, just existing. One morning in April, my phone rang. Unknown number again. This time I didn't hesitate as much. "Hello, Mom," Mason's voice. Hoarse, tired, broken. I sat on the front step. My heart beat fast, but I didn't lose my calm. "Mason." Long silence. Heavy breathing on the other end. "How are you?" he asked finally. "Good." "You?" "Bad. Very bad." I waited. I wasn't going to make this easy for him. "Harper left me." "I guess you already know," Margaret told me. "I lost my job. I'm living with your sister. I sleep on her sofa." His voice cracked. "I have nothing, Mom. I lost everything." Part of me wanted to console him, to tell him everything would be fine, that I would fly back to hug him. But that part was old. It was the Eleanor who had died the day she took that plane. "I'm sorry, Mason," I said sincerely. "That must be very difficult." "Is that all you're going to say?" His voice raised in pitch. "You're not coming back? You're not going to help me? Help you how?" "I don't know. With money. With support. You're my mother." There it was. The expectation. The right he thought he had over me. "Mason, have you ever wondered how I got here?" "What?" "This house. This place. How do you think I paid for it?" Confused silence. "I don't know. I thought maybe you had inherited something. Or won the lottery." I let out a humorless laugh. "I worked 2 jobs for 20 years. I saved every penny I could. I invested in secret. I learned about finances alone, reading library books at 3 in the morning. While you slept, I was building my escape. While Harper humiliated me and you laughed, I was saving money. This house cost $750,000. Mason, I earned every dollar. The silence was thick. I didn't know. Of course you didn't know. You never asked. You never really saw me. I was just your mother. The one who cooked. The one who cleaned. The one who was always available for whatever you needed. Mom, I haven't finished. For 5 years I watched your wife humiliate me, make comments about my clothes, my weight, my age, my existence. And you laughed. Mason, every time. You never defended me. Not a single time. I didn't realize it was that serious. Exactly. You didn't realize, because I didn't matter enough for you to pay attention. I heard sobs on the other end. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Mom. I was an idiot. I was a bad son. But I need you. Please. I don't have anyone else. I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath. Mason, I love you. You are my son and you always will be. But I am not going to be your savior again. I am not coming back so you can feel better. I am not going to sacrifice the peace I found. Then you don't really love me. That phrase, that attempt at manipulation, would have worked before. Now it just gave me clarity. I love you enough to let you fall, so you learn to get up alone. Because if I come back now, nothing will change. You will keep being dependent, and I will keep being invisible. What am I supposed to do? His voice was that of a lost child. But he wasn't a child. He was a man of 32. Get professional help. Go to therapy. Look for a job. Rebuild your life. Like I did. I don't know if I can. I didn't know if I could either. But here I am. In a house I bought with my effort. Living a life I built from scratch. You can do the same. But you have to want it. And you have to do it alone. And if I need you, I am a phone call away to talk. But I am not coming back physically. I am not going back to being who I was. That woman doesn't exist anymore. Mason. He hung up without saying goodbye. I sat on the step, with the phone in my hand, feeling a strange mixture of pain and liberation. It hurt. Of course it hurt, but it was a clean pain. Not the dirty and constant pain of being ignored. It was the pain of setting limits. Of choosing myself. Of knowing I was doing the right thing even when it felt terrible. Claire appeared an hour later with chocolate cake. I saw your face from my window. Thought you might need this. We sat in the kitchen. I told her everything. She nodded while she ate. Children have to learn that mothers aren't infinite resources. That we are human. That we can break. You did the right thing. Then why do I feel so bad? Because you're a good person. Good people feel guilt even when they shouldn't. But guilt doesn't mean you're wrong. That afternoon I painted. A large canvas, violent colors, reds, oranges, yellows. An explosion of emotions coming out of my hands in oil paint. I didn't know what I was painting until I finished. It was a phoenix, reborn from its own ashes. Julia, my teacher, came to see it days later. She stayed quiet for a long time. Eleanor, this is extraordinary. You should exhibit it. It's very personal. Art always is. That's why it connects. She convinced me to include it in a local exhibition in town. Small, in a gallery for emerging artists. I accepted more for her than for me. The night of the exhibition I arrived nervous. My painting hung on the main wall. The phoenix shone under the lights. People stopped to look at it. I heard comments. What strength! You can feel the pain and hope together. This is real art. I sold the painting that night. A woman of 50, with sad but determined eyes, offered me $2,000 for it. This painting is my story too, she said. I need to have it in my house. I gave her my number. We became friends later. Her name was Sarah. She was getting out of an abusive marriage. My painting gave her strength, she said. We drank coffee every week. We swapped stories of survival. Months kept passing. My garden became the most beautiful on the block. The roses bloomed in constant waves. Earl taught me to make floral arrangements. I started selling them at the market on Saturdays, not because I needed the money. Because I liked it. Because it made me feel useful on my own terms, not on others' terms. The herb lady saved me the best spot. Here, honey, your flowers deserve to be seen. One July afternoon, 6 months after my arrival, I was watering the rose bushes when I saw an unfamiliar car stop in front of my gate. A rental car. A man got out, tall, thin, with messy hair. My heart stopped. It was Mason. He had come. I left the hose running and walked toward the gate. I didn't open it. We looked at each other through the iron. He looked different, thinner, deep, dark circles, but something in his eyes had changed. It wasn't the look of the spoiled child. It was the look of someone who had hit rock bottom. "Mom." His voice was barely a whisper. "Mason." Silence. The water from the hose kept running in the garden. The roses shone behind me. "Can I come in?" I hesitated. Every fiber of my maternal being screamed yes. But the woman who had built this life knew she had to be careful. "Why did you come?" "Because you were right. About everything. I went to therapy, 3 months, twice a week. I got a new job. It's not a big deal, but it's honest. I stopped looking for others to save me." His eyes filled with tears. "And I realized something. I never saw you, Mom. Never. You were there the whole time, and I was blind. Harper was cruel, and I laughed because it was easier than confronting her. I used you as a shield, as a servant, as a resource, never as a mother, never as a person." The tears ran down his face uncontrolled. "I came to apologize. Really. Without expecting anything. Without asking you to come back. I just came to tell you I'm sorry. That I finally understand. That I'm proud of you. Of this," he pointed to the house, "of what you built. Of you having the courage to leave when I didn't have the courage to treat you right." I opened the gate slowly. He entered with hesitant steps. We stood on the stone path, without hugging yet, just looking at each other, really looking at each other. "Do you want to see the house?" I asked. He nodded. I walked him through every room. I showed him my painting studio, the garden, the roses. He listened attentively. He asked questions. He really listened to the answers. We ended up on the terrace, watching the ocean. We sat on the terrace without speaking for long minutes. Just the sound of the waves filled the space between us. Mason looked at the horizon as if searching for words he had never learned to say. I waited. I was no longer in a hurry. I no longer had the need to fill awkward silences so others would feel better. Finally, he spoke. "This place is incredible. Mom, it's like you found paradise." "I didn't find it," I corrected gently. "I built it. There is a difference." He nodded slowly, processing. "How did you do it? I mean, not just buying the house, but this piece, it shows on your face, in how you move. You seem like another person." I took my time to answer. I poured 2 glasses of lemonade I had made that morning. I passed him one. I broke first. Completely. That night after dinner, when Harper made that toast and you laughed, something inside me fractured. But not in the way it had happened before. This time the fracture was different. It was liberating. Like when an old tree splits and leaves room for something new to grow. I drank from my glass. I stopped expecting you guys to change. I stopped expecting recognition. I stopped expecting love from the wrong place. And when I stopped expecting, I could start building. Mason looked at me with an intensity I had never seen in him. "Therapy helped me understand something," he said with a trembling voice. "Harper didn't turn me into someone cruel. I already was. She just gave me permission to show it." He wiped his eyes with the back of his hand. "I saw how she treated you, and I said nothing because a part of me believed she was right, that you were less, that your function was to serve. As if everything you had done for me for 30 years didn't count, as if it were your obligation and not your sacrifice." His words were a knife but also a balm. The recognition I had waited for years finally arrived, but I didn't need it to survive anymore. It was a gift, not a necessity. "And now?" I asked. "Now what do you think? That I was blind. That I had the strongest woman in the world as a mother, and I treated her like a piece of furniture. That when you needed me most, I wasn't there." He covered his face with his hands. "And that I deserve for you to hate me." "I don't hate you, Mason." My voice was firm. "I loved you so much I almost lost myself in that love. But I don't hate you." "How can you not hate me?" "Because hate requires energy. I don't want to spend anymore. Because I love you still. Only now that love has limits. It has conditions. And the main one is that I come first." The silence returned, but this time it was different, cleaner. He looked at his hands as if seeing them for the first time. My therapist says I came here looking for absolution, that I need you to forgive me to feel better. He looked up. But I didn't come to ask for that. I came to tell you that I understand if you never forgive me, that I understand if you don't want me to be part of your new life, that I respect your decision. Whatever it is, those words were worth more than 1,000 empty apologies. How long are you staying? I asked. I booked a hotel for 3 days. If you want me to leave sooner, just say it. You can stay. There is a guest room. His face showed surprise. Really? With conditions, I added quickly. You respect my spaces. You respect my schedule. You take nothing for granted. You don't expect me to cook for you or wait on you. If you stay, you are a guest. You don't go back to being the son I was forced to serve. Understood. Understood. His voice was firm. Thanks, Mom. I installed him in the back room. The smallest one, but with good light. I gave him clean towels. I showed him where everything was. The kitchen is open. Make yourself whatever you need. I eat breakfast at 7. I work in the garden until noon. Afternoons are for painting or reading. If you want to join me in something, ask first. He mentally noted every word. I can help with the garden tomorrow. If you want? I'd like to. I nodded. Then I'll see you at 7. That night I ate dinner alone on the terrace as always. Mason ate in the kitchen. He respected the space. When I finished, he had already washed his dishes and was in his room. I knocked on the door. Yes. Good night, Mason. A pause. Good night, Mom. And thanks for giving me this opportunity. I didn't answer. I just closed my door and lay down listening to the ocean. I felt something strange. It wasn't the complete happiness from before he arrived, but it wasn't the old pain either. It was something in between. Caution, watchful hope, the possibility of something new built on honest ruins. The next morning, Mason appeared in the garden at 7 sharp. He was wearing old clothes, appropriate for getting dirty. What do you need me to do? I pointed to a section of weeds. That needs clearing. Earl comes at 10. He'll tell you better. We worked in silence. It was strange to see him sweat, get his hands dirty, do physical work without complaining. When Earl arrived, I introduced them. This is my son, Mason. He's visiting for a few days. Earl measured him with his gaze. You know about plants? Nothing, admitted Mason. But I want to learn. Earl smiled. Well, humility is the first step. Come, I'll teach you. I watched them work together for hours. Earl was patient but demanding. Mason listened to every instruction, asked questions, didn't pretend to know. At noon, when I stopped for lunch, they kept going. I made salad and sandwiches. I called them. We ate, the 3 of us, at the garden table. Earl told stories of his 50 years as a gardener. Mason listened, fascinated. And you always lived here? He asked. Born 2 miles from here. Never left. Why? Everything I need is in this town. He looked at his plate. Peace isn't in places, son. It's in how you build your life. After lunch, Mason helped wash dishes without being asked. Then he went back to the garden. I went to paint. From my studio, I could see them working. There was something healing in watching my son learn from a wise man, in seeing him do honest work without expecting applause. That afternoon, they painted a mental canvas I would never forget. At night, Mason cooked, simple pasta with tomato sauce. It's not much, he said shyly, but I wanted to do something. We ate together on the terrace. The conversation flowed more naturally. He told me about his new job, manager at a building supply store. It's not glamorous, but the boss is decent, pays on time, treats me with respect. That is more than many have, I said. I know. I finally understand. He spoke to me about therapy, about how the first sessions were just to complain about Harper. But my therapist kept asking me the same question. And what did you do? At first it annoyed me. I was the victim, right? My wife had left me. But session after session, I started to see the pattern. I was the villain too, in my own story and in yours. He took a deep breath. He showed me something. He asked me to make a list of everything you had done for me. Everything. Since I was born until the day you left. He took out his phone. Do you want to see it? I don't need to see it, Mason. I lived it. It has 237 things, specific ones, from changing diapers to paying for my college, from nights without sleep when I was sick to meals you prepared with the last money you had. His eyes shone, and then he asked me to make a list of what I had done for you. Long pause. I didn't even reach 20 things, and most were basic. Calling you on your birthday, visiting you occasionally. Things any decent son does without thinking. The exercise destroyed me, he continued. Seeing in black and white how unbalanced our relationship was. How much you had given, how little I had received. I don't mean material things. I mean respect, consideration, active love, not just words. He wiped his tears. My therapist asked me, if your mother were your friend and not your mother, would she still be your friend after you treated her like that? The answer was no, never. Because no one tolerates from a friend what I made you tolerate as a son. His words fell like stones in calm water. They created ripples that expanded. That's why I came, Mom. Not to ask you to come back, not to ask for money, not to look for you to save me again. I came to look you in the eyes and tell you, you were right about everything, and I came to ask if there is any way, any form in this universe, for you to let me try to be the son you deserve to have from the beginning. The ocean roared softly in the distance. The stars began to appear. My heart was a drum beating complicated truths. I don't know if it's possible, Mason, I said honestly. There is a lot of damage, a lot of lost time, a lot of broken trust. I know, but, I continued, I am willing to try. Slowly, with clear limits, without guarantees. I looked straight at him. If you fail me again, there won't be a third chance. I will leave your life forever. Do you understand? I understand. His voice was firm. And I accept. Mason's 3-day visit turned into a week. Every morning, I found him in the garden before me, working in silence, learning from Earl. Every night he cooked something simple, and we ate on the terrace, sharing silences that were no longer awkward. There was something different about him, a stillness that didn't exist before, as if he had finally stopped running from himself. The 4th day, Claire came to drink coffee. Mason was in the garden. She observed him from the kitchen window. That's your son. It wasn't a question. Yes, he looks like you, in the eyes. She poured sugar in her cup. How do you feel about him being here? It was a question I had asked myself 100 times. Scared, hopeful, cautious, all at the same time. Claire nodded. That means you're being smart. Love doesn't have to be blind to be real. I told her about the conversations we had had, about Mason's therapy, about his apologies. Do you believe him? Claire asked directly. I want to believe him. But believing isn't enough. I need to see it with time. Words are easy. Real changes are slow and painful. Wise answer. She drank her coffee. Just remember, Eleanor, you don't have to forgive quickly. You don't have to make everything go back to how it was before. In fact, it shouldn't go back to how it was before. What was before was broken. That afternoon, I took Mason to see the town. We walked through the market. I introduced him to the herb lady. This is your boy? She asked with bright eyes, handsome like the mother. Mason blushed. We bought ingredients for dinner. He insisted on paying. Please, Mom, let me. I accepted. In the gallery where I had exhibited my painting, Julia was organizing a new exhibition. Eleanor, what a joy to see you. And this young man, my son, Mason. Julia measured him with an artist's look. He has your same expression when he's thinking. Genes don't lie. I showed him the painting of the phoenix in a photo on my phone. I sold it the first night. Mason looked at the image with fascination. You painted it. Yes, it is. Powerful. You can feel the emotion. Julia smiled. Your mother has a gift. She paints with her soul. Mason looked at me with something I had never seen in his eyes. Respect. Genuine admiration. I didn't know you painted. There are many things about me you don't know, Mason, because you never asked. I didn't say it with cruelty, just with truth. He nodded slowly. You're right. I want to know you. Really. If you let me. That night, after dinner, we sat in the living room. Mason held a cup of tea between his hands. Can I ask you something? Go ahead. When did you decide to leave? I mean, what was the exact moment? I thought about that question. There was no exact moment. It was years of small moments. Every time Harper made a comment and you laughed. Every time I called you and you told me you were busy. Every time I arrived with food and you didn't even say thank you. They piled up like drops of water in a glass. And the night of the toast was the drop that spilled everything. Did you ever think about telling me how you felt before leaving? All the time, Mason. But you guys didn't listen. When I tried to say I felt bad, Harper changed the subject. When I said I needed you to defend me, you told me I was being too sensitive. When I asked for a little consideration, you treated me like I was being dramatic. Eventually, I stopped trying. Because screaming into the void is exhausting. He set the cup on the table with trembling hands. God, Mom, I was so blind. You weren't blind, Mason. You chose not to see. There is a difference. My words were harsh but necessary. Seeing requires courage. It requires being willing to admit you are wrong, and you weren't ready for that. And now? Now you are here, asking the right questions, listening to the answers even if they hurt. That is growth. He got up and walked toward the window. Outside, the garden shone under the moonlight. Harper called me 2 weeks ago. My heart sped up, but I kept my voice calm. What did she want? To come back. She said she had made a mistake, that she missed me, that we could start over. He turned toward me. I told her no. Why? Because my therapist made me see something. Harper didn't love me. She loved the idea of me. The Mason she could mold. The Mason who cut ties with his mother because she asked him to. The Mason who had no personality of his own. He took a deep breath, but that Mason was miserable. And making my mother miserable to please my wife wasn't love. It was cowardice. I sat back down. How did she react? She was furious. She told me I was a failure, that without her I was nobody, that I was going to end up alone and pathetic. He smiled sadly. And you know what I realized in that moment? That she had always talked like that, only before she disguised it better, or I was too dumb to see it. You weren't dumb. You were in love. Love makes us blind to many things. Did you love my dad like that? He asked with genuine curiosity. It was a question he had never asked me. I loved your dad differently. He saw me. He respected me. We worked as a team. When he died, I lost my partner, not my jailer. I paused. Harper wasn't your partner, Mason. She was your boss. And you let her be because it was easier than being your own person. He nodded slowly. You're right. Like in everything else, on the 6th day, Margaret arrived. Without warning. Her car stopped in front of the gate with a screech of brakes. She got out like a whirlwind. She rang the doorbell insistently. I was in the garden with Mason and Earl. The three of us looked at each other. It's my sister, I said. Mason went pale. Do you want me to handle it? No. This is something I have to do myself. I walked toward the gate. Margaret was shouting on the other side. Eleanor, open this door right now. I opened it. She entered like a storm. Can I know what is going on? Mason has been here a week and hasn't answered my calls. She looked at me with fury. What did you do to him? Good morning, Margaret. My voice was calm. I didn't do anything to him. Is he visiting? Visiting? He must be coming back. He lives with me. His things are at my house. His things can stay there, or he can pick them up. That is his decision, not mine. Mason appeared behind me. Aunt Margaret. His voice was firm. I came on my own. No one forced me. Mason, honey, your mother is manipulating you, don't you see? No, he interrupted her. Mom isn't manipulating me. For the first time in my life, I am seeing clearly. Margaret looked at both of us as if we were strangers. I can't believe what I'm hearing. Eleanor, you were always the reasonable one, the one who kept the family together. Together. I let out a humorless laugh. Margaret, I didn't keep the family together. I kept myself small so you guys could feel big. There is a difference. That's not true. No? Tell me. How many times did you ask me how I was when Dad died? How many times did you thank me for taking care of Mom while you lived your perfect life? How many times did you see me as something more than a solution to your problems? The silence was crushing. Margaret opened her mouth, closed it. Nothing came out. Exactly, I continued. Because for you, I was useful. I wasn't your sister. I was your resource. And when I stopped being useful, I stopped existing for you. Mom loved you, Margaret tried weakly. Mom tolerated me. And you allowed it because it suited you. While I was the invisible one, you could be the star. Margaret dropped into a garden chair. She looked small suddenly. Old? Tired? Is that what you think of me? That I'm selfish? I think you are human. That you did what we all do. We take the easiest path. And the easiest path was to ignore my pain, because acknowledging it meant accepting your complicity. Mason approached. Auntie, I was complicit too. Of many things. But I am trying to change. Maybe you could too. Margaret looked at both of us. Silent tears ran down her face. I don't know how. Her voice was a broken whisper. I don't know how to fix this. I sat beside her. I didn't touch her. But I was present. Start by listening. By accepting. By not justifying. I don't need you to tell me I'm right about everything. I just need you to acknowledge that you hurt me. That Mom hurt me. And that you saw it and did nothing. She sobbed. A deep sound coming from somewhere ancient. I'm sorry. God, Eleanor. I'm so sorry. They weren't empty words. They were words soaked in truth. I believe you, I said softly. But I'm sorry doesn't erase 30 years. It doesn't erase the damage. It's just the beginning. The beginning of what? Of building something new. If you want, if you are willing to do the work, she looked up. You would be willing? Under my terms, with clear limits. Without going back to how we were before. Because how we were before was killing me. Margaret nodded slowly. Can I stay? A few days? To try to understand. I looked at Mason. He nodded. There is room, I said finally. But the same rules I gave Mason apply to you. Respect, consideration, nothing taken for granted. I accept. Her voice was small but sincere. I installed her in another room. I gave her towels. I showed her the kitchen. That night, the three of us ate dinner in silence. A silence loaded with decades of unsaid things that had finally come to light. After dinner, Margaret helped with the dishes. Mason swept the terrace. I sat outside watching the stars. Claire appeared with a bottle of wine. Saw the car. More family. My sister. Need reinforcements? I smiled. The worst has passed. We sat together. You are rebuilding your family, Claire observed. No, I corrected. I am deciding who enters my new life. And under what conditions. It's not the same. You're right. It's better. We clinked glasses while the moon illuminated my garden of roses that finally had all the room in the world to grow. The following week was a painful excavation process. 3 people in a house, each carrying decades of unhealed wounds. But there was something different this time. No one ran away. No one pretended. Conversations were difficult but real. Margaret and Mason started to see patterns they had never noticed. How each had contributed to my invisibility. How they had taken my sacrifice as something natural instead of extraordinary. One morning, Margaret found me in the garden before sunrise. Can I sit? I nodded. We stayed in silence watching the sky change from black to purple to orange. I dreamed of Mom last night, she said finally. She scolded me for being here. She told me it was a betrayal to be on your side. She plucked a blade of grass. And I realized something. Mom taught us to compete. You and me. She made me believe that for me to shine, you had to be dull. And I believed it. My whole life I believed it. It wasn't just Mom, I replied. It was society. It was the times. It was a whole system that told us there was only room for one valuable daughter. And we believed it. Margaret wiped her eyes. But we were sisters. We should have protected each other. And I didn't protect you. I sacrificed you. Yes, you did. There was no reason to lie. Can you forgive me someday? Her voice trembled. I don't know, Margaret. Honestly, I don't know. But I can try to build something new with you. Not based on the past, based on who we decide to be now. She nodded, accepting that truth. How did you do this? She pointed to the house, the garden, everything. How did you find the strength? I didn't find it. I built it. Penny by penny. Decision by decision. Every time I chose not to spend on something unnecessary. Every time I invested when I was scared. Every time I said no when I wanted to say yes just to please. I looked at her. Strength isn't something you have. It's something you practice until it becomes part of you. Mason appeared with coffee for the 3 of us. He sat with us on the dew-covered grass. I called my therapist yesterday, he said. I told him I'm here. That you are here too, Auntie. He looked at Margaret. He told me something important. That family healing doesn't mean going back to being like before. It means creating something completely new, with honest foundations this time. He drank his coffee, and that maybe we'll never be a normal family, but we can be a real family. Margaret sobbed softly. I don't know if I deserve to be in that new family. It's not about deserving, I said. It's about choosing, about doing the work, about staying present even when it's uncomfortable. I looked directly at her. Are you willing to do that? She nodded with determination. Yes, I am. I don't know how, but I want to try. Then let's start with something simple, I suggested. Everyone shares a truth they have never said, without judgments, just listening. Mason went first. Me first. He took a deep breath. I was always jealous of how Mom managed alone, of her strength, because I felt weak, and instead of admiring her, I resented her. I allowed Harper to treat her badly because secretly I wanted Mom to be less perfect, so I wouldn't feel so inadequate. His words hung in the air like a sacred confession. Thank you for your honesty, I said simply. Margaret continued. I knew Mom treated you differently. I saw it my whole life, and I liked it. It made me feel special, chosen. And when she died and left me the house, it wasn't a surprise. It was confirmation of something I had always known, that I was worth more, at least in her eyes. Tears ran freely, and the shame of admitting that is almost unbearable. But it's the truth. Thank you, I said again. My turn had arrived. My truth is this, I started. For years I told myself I stayed out of love, that I endured for you guys. But part of me stayed out of fear. Fear of being nothing without my role of sacrificed mother, without my role of useful sister. Fear of discovering that without serving others, I had no identity. I looked at the ocean, and the irony is that I had to lose you to find myself. I had to let go of everything to discover who Eleanor was without all of you. We sat in silence processing. The sun had already risen completely. Earl arrived for his shift. Good morning, family. He looked at the three of us on the grass. We're doing group therapy. We laughed. It was the first real laugh between us in decades. Something like that, I replied. Well, plants don't do therapy. They just grow. Maybe we should learn from them. His simple wisdom was exactly what we needed. That afternoon, the three of us worked in the garden under Earl's supervision. Margaret had never dirtied her hands like that. This is harder than it looks, she panted while digging. Most valuable things are, replied Earl. That's why people prefer to buy flowers than grow them. But the ones you grow yourself mean more, because you know the effort behind every petal. He looked toward my roses. Eleanor brought them from very far away. She took care of them every day. And now look, they are the most beautiful in the neighborhood. Mason was planting bulbs following Earl's instructions. How long do they take to bloom? Months. Maybe a year. A year. Real beauty requires patience, son. Instant things rarely last. Another blow of wisdom we needed to hear. We worked until the sun started to go down. We were dirty, sweaty, exhausted. But there was something satisfying in that. In doing physical work together. In building something with our hands. At night, Sarah came to dinner. My friend, who had bought the Phoenix painting. She wanted to meet my family. The dinner was surprisingly light. Sarah told stories of her own healing process, of how she had escaped a marriage that almost killed her. The day I left, I had only a suitcase and my dignity, she said. I thought I had lost everything, but actually I had just won myself back. Margaret and Mason listened absorbed. And your children? Asked Mason. They hated me at first. They thought I was selfish, that I was abandoning the family. Sarah drank wine, but eventually they understood. When they saw me bloom, when they realized that the woman they knew before was just a shadow. Now we have a real relationship, based on mutual respect, not obligation. After Sarah left, Margaret helped me with the dishes. She is incredible. Yes, she is. Do you think we can get there, to that place of peace? I looked at her. Depends on how much you are willing to change, on how much you are willing to let go. You can't bring the old ego to the new life, Margaret. It doesn't fit. She nodded thoughtfully. I have so much to unlearn. We all do. That's why it's a process. On the 9th day, Mason received a call from his work. I have to go back. There was panic in his eyes. But I don't want this to end. I don't want to go back and have everything return to how it was. It doesn't have to be like that, I assured him. You can leave and keep growing. You can keep what you learned here. Can I come back? His voice was that of a scared child. Whenever you want. But with the same rules. Respect, consideration, honesty. I accept them. Always. I hugged him. A real hug. Not the obligatory hug from before. One that meant something. Margaret decided to stay 2 more days. I need more time here. Away from my life. To think. I understood her. When Mason left, the house felt quieter. Margaret and I had deeper conversations. About Mom. About Dad. About how favoritism had damaged both of us in different ways. I was in a prison too, admitted Margaret. I had to be perfect always. I couldn't fail. I couldn't be human. Because if I stopped being the favorite, what did I have left? Your humanity, I replied. Which is more valuable than any favoritism. The day Margaret left, we hugged at the gate. Thank you for not giving up on me, she whispered. Thank you for coming, I replied. I will be back. In a month. If you allow me. Sounds good to me. I watched her walk away feeling something strange. It wasn't the complete reconciliation of the movies. It was something more real, more fragile, more honest. It was the beginning of something that could work or could break, but at least it was authentic. That night, alone again in my house, I walked through the garden under the stars. The roses shone silver under the moon. Earl had said they were the most beautiful in the neighborhood. But I knew the truth. They weren't beautiful because they were perfect. They were beautiful because they had survived. They had been ripped from their original home. They had traveled 2,000 miles. They had been replanted in unknown soil, and even so they bloomed. Like me. I sat on my terrace with a glass of wine. The ocean whispered ancient secrets. I thought about the Eleanor of a year ago. The invisible woman serving plates at a dinner where she was humiliated. That woman had died. Not violently, but softly, like a necessary transformation. And from her ashes, this version was born. The woman who owned a mansion, who painted, who had friends, who set limits, who said no, who chose herself without guilt. My phone vibrated. Text from Mason. Arrived safe, Mom. Thanks for this week. For your patience. For giving me the chance to meet the real Eleanor. I love you. I replied. Love you too. Take care. Simple. Honest. No drama. Another message. Margaret. Home now. I feel different. Lighter. And also heavier. As if I'm carrying the weight of the truth, but I let go of the weight of the lie. Does that make sense? I smiled. Perfect sense. I turned off the phone. I looked at the stars. I remembered Harper's words that fateful night. Some mothers-in-law are useful. Others just take up space. In my mind, I rewrote the phrase. Some women occupy space apologizing. Others build empires and plant roses. I drank my wine, savoring every sip. Savoring my freedom, my peace, my life built with my own hands. The wind brought the smell of salt and flowers. Tomorrow, Earl would come early. We had plans to expand the garden. More roses, maybe jasmine, maybe lavender. The space was infinite. Like my future, like my capacity to bloom. It had taken me 64 years to learn it. But finally I knew. I didn't take up too much space. The world had simply been too small. So I built my own world. One where I fit completely. One where I could breathe. One where finally, gloriously, I was free.